Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Fixed Fees, Ditching the Billable Hour, presented by Lee Rosen. My name is Stephanie Phelan, and I'm a marketing manager at MyCase. I will be your host today. I'd like to give you a few tips about participating on GoToWebinar. The webinar control panel is on the right-hand side of your screen. This is where you may submit questions and where you'll see polls come up throughout the presentation. Please submit questions during the presentation. Don't hold off until the very end. We save your questions until the end, and that's when we will answer what we've collected throughout the webinar. Also, please note that these slides, the remaining questions, and the recording will be available by end of day tomorrow on the MyCase blog, and it will also be emailed to all registrants. Also, that Twitter hashtag to follow the conversation is #FixedFees. Today's webinar is hosted by MyCase, but before we jump into things, I'd like to give a quick overview. MyCase is a web-based law practice management software that takes care of your daily practice requirements for calendaring, contact management, document management and templates, time and billing, client communication, custom workflows, and more in one solution at an affordable price. MyCase is priced for solo and small firms at just $39 a month per attorney and $29 a month per paralegal or support staff. MyCase also offers websites for our customers. The cost to set up and build your website is only $500, and then there's a $50 per month maintenance fee. If you can just go to the website slide. We use a modern professional design built for your firm. The websites contain social media and blog integration, and best of all, complete integration with MyCase practice management software. Now you and your customers can log into MyCase directly from your website. Last but not least, we enjoy hosting educational events for professionals in the legal industry, and that is why we're all here today. So let me tell you a little bit about our presenter, Lee Rosen. As a distant cousin of William Shatner, Lee Rosen happens to share many characteristics with Star Trek's legendary Captain Kirk. While Captain Kirk is the captain of the starship USS Enterprise, Lee Rosen is the fearless leader of the Rosen Law Firm, with 4 locations throughout North Carolina. Experiencing his own version of strange new worlds, Lee's interests include flying airplanes within the Earth's atmosphere, scuba diving, and speaking to professional and local civics groups about how to stay happily married. Lee works remotely, as does much of his team. He's currently wrapping up his winter on Miami Beach and is heading to Berlin for the summer. Captain Kirk may have explored where no man has gone before, but Lee and his firm explored the journey that is fixed fees. Lee, thanks so much for being here today. Please go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for that kind introduction. I'm so glad that you guys could all come along for our discussion of fixed fees. I think that we've got some material here that you will find useful in your practice, and that you can figure out ways to apply to your clients. But keep in mind as we go through this that what I'm describing is my experience in my firm. And many of you are in different practice areas, in different geographic areas, in different markets in terms of the competitiveness, and how you use this information will vary dramatically from case to case. And so the key here is experimentation. There is no right or wrong way to go about implementing fixed fees, but I'm going to give you some ideas about how to do that. It's always funny to me when you come to a webinar like this and they put the picture of the presenter. You know, it's a picture like the one you're seeing on the screen, and this one is of course shot by a professional photographer who had me standing there trying to look, and unfortunately this is as good as it gets, but I wanted to give you a little dose of reality. So a few minutes ago I took an actual picture of me in front of my laptop. This is literally moments ago. Those are my David Clark headsets, which I have been using for a couple of years, and which I take to coffee shops and use them if I'm working there so that people don't hear the background noise. And let me just say that those headsets, this whole little outfit here, that is a real chick magnet. And so if you're looking to meet people, you might want to go ahead and get one of these. So I started thinking about fixed fees a long time ago. It really became an issue for me back in the 90s, and I was miserable with the hourly billing, as probably many of you are. It's the sort of misery that attracts you to a webinar like this. And I would have to deposit funds to our trust account. We'd have to pester clients about replenishing the trust account. We would do work that went beyond the balance in the trust account, especially trials where we would get caught up in a case and the client would have run out of money and we just would have no choice but to finish, and we'd end up writing off the balance as uncollectible. And I had one particularly bad week where all of this was weighing on me and driving me crazy. And, well, I say it was a bad week. It was probably a typical week, but some things happened in that week. And one thing that happened was that a computer technician came into the office. One of these guys that comes in, and back then, you know, everything was done in the office. There was none of this cloud stuff where you have gurus all fixing things for you with their high skill set. This was one of those guys whose pants were hanging down too low and you could see his butt crack, and he was charging us $150 an hour. And he came in to fix the computer because something was wrong with the network, one thing or another. And as he was looking at my computer, he noticed this picture in a frame on my desk. And he started asking questions about Disney, and he had a trip planned with his kids and his family, and he starts asking me, you know, when did you go, where did you stay, and I sort of got sucked right in. You know, when my kids were young, I felt like I had sort of become a master of going to Disney World and how to handle it in the most efficient way, and I had all these strategies and tactics for it, and I'm talking, and then I realized it's like, oh God, I am paying this guy $150 an hour to listen to my story about Disney World. And what I wanted to do at that moment was, like, you know, say, okay, look, I got to stop talking to you about Disney. You need to get back to the computer. And it really colored my interaction with this guy. Now, interestingly, at home that same week, we had a spigot, however you say that word, outside of our house freeze. It got cold and I had not unscrewed the hose from the spigot, and it cracked, and then the temperature warmed up and water was pouring out of the side of the house. So we called Roto-Rooter, and Roto-Rooter came, and I was anxious about this person billing me by the hour, you know, with a plumber at $100, $200, whatever it is, a lot of money for a plumber. And I'm like, oh gosh, we're going to get into this whole thing again, just like with the computer repair guy. It's going to cost me a fortune. And the Roto-Rooter guy says, it cost $125 to fix this thing. Sign here and I will go ahead and take care of it. And that was it. It was a fixed fee for fixing this plumbing problem. And I was so relieved. And I took note of that. I realized that, boy, the fixed fee is making me feel very differently about the company. And here I am now, many, many years later, still talking about Roto-Rooter and saying good things about them. They fixed it. It was a good price. It all worked out. The reality is I have no idea what it should cost to fix this kind of plumbing problem, but I really appreciated that they charged me with a fixed fee, and I felt good about that. And what I wanted to do at that point was find a way to do that for our clients, because I very much realized and did the math in my head that this makes a difference, and it feels better, and I trust this person more, and I'm more comfortable, and I'm more likely to say good things to others out in the world about the Roto-Rooter people, and I want people to say those kinds of things about me. And so those two incidents were really the impetus for my making a really big change in my practice. Now, we've got a poll for you. You know, we like to keep it interactive. So I've got a question for you. What is your least favorite activity? First, eating lunch. Second, tracking your time. I know everyone likes keeping time records. Third, calling clients about overdue fees. Fourth, reviewing your bills before sending, going through those draft bills before they go out. And number 5, taking vacation. What is your least favorite activity? Go ahead and answer the poll.
Thanks, Lee. And I see those poll results coming in. If you can all go ahead and select your option. I'll go ahead and close the poll right now. And for our results, so we have 0% that said eating lunch is their least favorite activity. Tracking your time is 30%. And as I'm sure you're expecting, 61%, so the vast majority, calling your clients about overdue fees.
Yeah.
9% said reviewing your bills before spending. And there was 1% that said taking vacation.
You need to get out more. Yeah, we're going to loosen you up. But yeah, calling clients about overdue fees, that is, oh my gosh, used to be the bane of my existence, and we have not had to do that in a very long time. And that is one of the big downsides to hourly billing. There are a number of others, and you're all very familiar with them. Hourly billing puts us at odds with our clients. These are the people whose side we want to be on. We didn't come to practice law to be opposed to our clients, in opposition to our clients. We wanted to be on the same side. We wanted to help them and support them. But the minute fees come between us and our client, it really does put us at odds, and hourly billing makes that happen. Hourly billing also rewards inefficiency, which is crazy. It's like we get all this cool technology, products like practice management products, and do all these cool things like paperless offices and all the new gadgets and software that comes out, and hourly billing is actually an incentive to not do these things. There is a penalty with hourly billing for technology. Crazy. Another reason to switch is we build these bureaucracies in our firms to do accounting. Now, if you're a solo, it's hard to see it sometimes. You don't think about, how much of your time you're spending. If you practice literally solo all by yourself, you don't always do the math of how much of your day is spent recording time and then dealing with the bills and sending them out and then calling the clients about getting them paid. But we create bureaucracies in the tiniest firms, but in bigger firms, boy, you can see it. You literally end up with rooms full of people that are doing nothing but accounting, and it's all about maintaining those time records. And I don't know a lawyer who bills hourly who likes keeping time records. It is just, it's miserable, and so many of us end up doing it at the end of the month, we literally sitting there imagining the days that went by and trying to recreate records. That is a nightmare. And so there are so many good reasons to switch away from hourly billing. And as I thought about it and tried to figure it out, I started thinking about airlines. I figured if they could do it, we could do it. Their lives, their businesses are, they're more complicated than ours. They have many more variables, everything from the cost of labor and the cost of fuel and wages and not knowing how many people are going to be on an airplane and what the weather is going to be and who's going to go on strike and all these variables, and yet they are able to figure out airplane fares. They can have a fixed fee. If you had to do an hourly rate on an airplane, none of us would fly anywhere. We'd be afraid to get on that plane if they didn't tell us the fare in advance. And so I figured if airlines can do it, we can do it. So what's the upside for you if you make the switch? I feel like it's huge. Now, obviously, my firm did it, and we did it a long time ago, and it has very much worked out for us. One of the most significant ways that it has been a good thing for us is that it gives you a competitive advantage in the marketplace. When most lawyers bill hourly and you're able to give a client certainty, when you can say to a client, this is what it's going to cost, soup to nuts, this is the price, that's a huge competitive advantage. You literally see the tension relieved from that client's body when you explain the fee to them. It also allows us to focus on premium work. We don't get into the scramble of taking every case for a small retainer and billing hourly. Switching to fixed fees allows you to focus on the more profitable business. It allows you to avoid that less profitable business, which are usually the cases that end up causing you trouble down the road. You eliminate all those bad things we talked about. You eliminate the collections, all those outstanding receivables. You minimize those unpleasant fee conversations. You get paid in full. So instead of being like most of us who are billing hourly and then writing off at the low end 5%, but many lawyers 10, 20, 30, 40%, instead of discounting, you're getting paid in full for the time that you're spending on a case, and that is a huge boost to the bottom line. Most significantly, is you're no longer at odds with your client. Your client knows from day one what the fee is going to be, and eliminating that tension between you and your client makes practicing law so much more enjoyable. It allows you to focus on the stuff you like doing. It allows you not to do what the 60% of you that answered that poll said about making calls about collecting fees, because that is just no fun at all. And if you are the client, boy, the upside, it just feels so much better, just like it felt for me with that Roto-Rooter. Knowing what the fee was going to be, it reduced my anxiety. It made me like the plumber more. It made me like the company more. And knowing in advance helps clients to make better decisions. All of you have sat with clients who are deciding whether to pursue litigation or not. And this is where I see it manifest itself most clearly. They're deciding whether to litigate or not, and they don't know what it's going to cost. So how do you decide if you're in or you're out if you don't know the total cost? And of course, most lawyers will say, well, I can't tell you the total cost because it's unpredictable. Well, with a fixed fee, they know the total cost, and they're able to make a better decision about whether to move forward or not. The other thing for clients, and this is a big deal, is that clients will get better representation with a fixed fee. And here's what I mean by that. When you are working hourly, all of you have had this experience where a client didn't tell you something that was important to the matter. And later, when you find it out and you ask the client, why didn't you tell me? The answer, at least some of the time, either implicitly or explicitly, is they didn't want to spend the money to tell you, because they knew if they picked up the phone or if they sent you an email that it was going to be an expensive interaction. And so you get surprised later as things develop in the case because you didn't hear about it in advance, and the client gets hurt because they didn't get the advice they should have gotten. The best example of this in my practice is the client who decides not to call and decides to sign something, whatever it may be. And often signing whatever that was is disastrous for the client. They thought they were saving themselves $50 or $100, and in fact they were creating a huge mess for themselves. Okay, another poll question. Are you, right now, are you doing any experimenting with flat fees, or are you actually doing them in your practice?
Okay, this will be interesting to see. So if everyone can please go ahead and cast your votes. They're coming in quite quickly. And I will go ahead and close the poll and share our results. So wow, that is impressive, Lee. 79% said yes. They are experimenting with flat fees, and 21%
awesome.
said no. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So as we move forward here today, I hope that you're picking up some tips to take those experiments to the next level, because that is probably the highest percentage. You know, I often, when I give a talk about fixed fees, I ask people to raise their hand, just like we're doing with the polls here. And usually in the typical room, it's not that many. But you know, you are a unique audience. You're technology savvy folks. You're educating yourselves. So in a way, it doesn't shock me, but it really does sort of surprise me to hear that high a percentage. So I think that's really cool. How do clients react when you propose a flat fee? We've kind of covered this. I mean, you really get my perspective on this. They react a lot like I reacted with the plumber. They really are happy to hear it. I just don't have any clients who say to me, boy, I wish you would bill us hourly and make the fee unpredictable. They love the certainty. They love that it's definite and that it's predictable and that they can count on it. And so the client reaction, in my experience, is really, really positive. And I think that's probably what the 79% of you that are experimenting are getting from your clients. I certainly hope so. So what's the downside? Is there any downside to flat fees? Well, like any business practice, there are pros and there are cons, and it's worth being aware of some of the pieces of this that may come into play at some point and have at least a little bit of a negative impact. That I don't think it's a huge problem, but I think there are some things that you should be aware of. Fundamentally, when you move from hourly to fixed fees, you're shifting the risk. You're shifting the risk from the client to the law firm. And so if unpredictable things happen, and that's the nature of things being unpredictable, you can't predict them and they happen, the risk is on you. And so you will have some cases that you end up earning less than you would have earned in an hourly scenario. And it's going to happen. It is to an extent predictable, and so that is something that you want to build into your model as you're coming up with your fixed fees. But I will tell you this, and I think you will agree, if anyone in this situation, the lawyer and the client, is better equipped to handle the risk, it's the lawyer. We're the ones who are most educated and most prepared. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for the lawyer who has the experience to set the fee and take the risk of their estimate being wrong. It's certainly they're certainly in a much better position to do it than the client is. Now, other downsides. This is harder to sell to some clients. Be prepared for that. You probably have had this experience. Let's face it, if you go to a client and you say, well, if we do this hourly, we need a $5,000 retainer, and we're going to bill you at $350 an hour. What they hear is they hear $5,000. And if you go to that same client and you say, we're going to do this for a fixed fee, you won't have to worry about the hourly billing. It's predictable. You'll know in advance. And the fixed fee is $15,000. Well, they're going to have a harder time swallowing that $15,000 initial payment than they are the $5,000 payment, assuming you're expecting it all to be paid at the outset of the case. But you eliminate all those phone calls chasing down the additional deposits to the trust account if you're billing hourly. But don't be surprised if some people hear a bigger number, and it's harder to sell that number to the client. That will, as all of you know, what many clients hear in a fee discussion, the only thing they hear is, how much money do I need to pay you right now? And that's where they get stuck, and that's what they focus on. Other downsides. It's challenging in the beginning of this process to figure out what the fees ought to be. Setting fees, pricing in general, is a difficult thing in any business. It's no easier in our businesses. So when you get started, you're going to learn a lot. I will tell you that there will be almost nothing in your practice that you learn faster than pricing, because you will have a really strong interest in studying it and thinking about it, and you will quickly tweak your pricing system as you go through clients. But in the beginning, it's tricky. Another downside is that if you borrow money from a bank, if you have a credit line, they don't like to, well, it's harder to borrow money if you're using fixed fees because you don't have receivables. Law firms with receivables, at least to most lenders, appear to have an asset. That receivable is an asset, and the lenders are more likely to lend to a business with receivables. We can all joke about how ridiculous that practice is, but that's the way they do business, so be aware of it. Another thing to be concerned about is winding down your practice. If you get to the end of it, or if you decide you are ready to stop and you've taken a bunch of fixed fees for cases that are going to stretch out over time, you will need to keep paying to do the work. So if you have associates, you've got to keep paying their salaries. If you're the one doing the work, you've got to have money to live on. So contemplate how you manage the funds. If you move them straight to your operating account, which in a lot of jurisdictions you can, do you spend that money or not? Because if you spend it, you will be in a tough spot when it comes to cash flow and winding down the practice. Other downsides: clients that abuse your system, clients who call like crazy, or clients that email like crazy, people that abuse the system in one way or another. Our experience now, in literally, I think we've been doing this for a decade, if not maybe closer to two, is that very few clients abuse the system. And the bottom line is that the clients who are trouble under an hourly system or a fixed fee system, and the clients who are not are not. I have not found that you gain that much control over your clients using the billing system. Those people who are out of control are just tough to control. Other issues to be aware of: if you're claiming attorney's fees as part of your litigation, you may need hourly records to supplement your fixed fee claim. You'll need to check the law in your jurisdiction. And then refunds. Any fixed fee system is going to, in one way or another, work. You're going to have refunds. You're going to need to be prepared for that, and you're going to want to look at the ethics rules in your jurisdiction and how they apply, because you're probably going to be making some refunds at one time or another based on how the case goes. I will tell you, our policy in general is, if somebody asks for a refund, we just want to make the refund. We want to make the problem go away. What is the financial impact of flat fees? Well, the financial impact is all good. You get paid. You're only working when you get paid. You end up with more free time, which you can use to take vacation or do pro bono cases or whatever it may be. You're no longer extending credit, so you do not have those write-offs. You're not working for free. Everything in my experience with respect to the fixed fees has been very positive for us from an earning money standpoint. We have taken away a bunch of the negatives and injected a bunch of positives. What about your state bar? What about your regulatory authority? Well, a lot of lawyers worry about this, and I hear from lawyers in all of the states who say to me, well, you can't do it in our jurisdiction. There's this problem or that problem. And, you know, obviously I'm not an expert on the law in your state. I can't be. But I can tell you that every lawyer I've worked with, when they keep pushing and keep trying to find a way to do it rather than a reason not to do it, they have been able to make it work. I do not know of a state in which criminal lawyers don't charge fixed fees to some extent. I think every jurisdiction you see the criminal bar routinely charging fixed fees. And so one way or another, this is workable in most jurisdictions. I'm not going to tell you that it is absolutely workable in yours. I certainly don't know which account the funds will go in. In my state, they go straight into an operating account, not into a trust account. You've got to explore this, but I would encourage you to do it from the perspective of, how can I make this work, not what are the reasons that it can't work. In our state, North Carolina, we had a case, Rudisil, R-U-D-I-S-I-L-L, and I'll actually tell you where you can find the pleadings from this case. It's a lawyer in North Carolina who charged a $25,000 fixed fee in a family law matter, and 48 hours later the case was settled. And the client filed a grievance against him with the state bar in North Carolina and said, hey, you didn't earn $25,000, give me some of my money back. And the state bar said, yeah, you didn't earn it. And they came after the attorney. The attorney said, the reason it settled in 48 hours was because of my reputation in the community, and that I'm known for having great talents, skills, and abilities. And the lawyer won. The state bar lost. And those pleadings are available. I've got a page set up, and I'll mention this again, but if you go to my blog at divorcediscourse.com/fees, divorcediscourse.com/fees, there'll be a link there that you can follow and download the pleadings in that case. There's also some other stuff there, like our client agreements and stuff that we use. I would encourage you to be very proactive about this, about figuring it out in your jurisdiction. But I would also encourage you to talk to the state bar, seek approval. They've looked at our client agreements. Have them look at yours. See what kind of feedback you can get. Most state bars will work with you to make sure that you are complying with the rules. Big question now. How do you set flat fees? How do you come up with what the numbers ought to be? This is what most folks who want to do it bump into immediately. And the reality of flat fees is that setting them it's part art and part science. It's a lot like setting an hourly rate. I mean, there are no guidelines here that make that easy or simple. And so when we did it, we took 5 years worth of our cases, we pulled all those files and created a list of what kind of work had been done in each case, what the issues were, and then we looked at the total fees. And so we created a complicated Excel spreadsheet to figure it out, and we found out what the variables were. And in our practice, there were 5 or 6 key variables, things like whether the client owned a business, whether they had children, how high their net worth was, things like that. Whether we're in family law, so whether they had marital misconduct, factors like that were key factors in determining whether the hourly fee went up or went down. And we used that information to help us set fees, and what we did is we set ranges for each of the issues that we deal with. But once you've done all of that, once you've collected data and analyzed it, there's no certainty there. It's not absolute. Now you want to apply the art, and you want to look at the market, and you want to see, your judgment of how people will react to what it is that you're thinking about doing. But it's part art, part science. I would not ignore the science, but I would also not ignore the art. You want to look at all the key variables and attach numbers to them. And then realistically, whatever you start with, it's going to change. This is an evolving process. You're going to be figuring it out as long as you're doing this. You're going to be tweaking. And if you have associates doing it for you, you're going to be giving them guidance and telling them what the minimum is, and then giving them some latitude to move the fees around based on the facts and circumstances of each case. What about a complicated case? What if the case is complicated? It's easy if you're a criminal defense attorney and somebody gets a speeding ticket. You pretty much know what's involved. That's a simple situation, and it's pretty easy to set the fixed fee. What if it's a complicated case? What are you going to do with that? Well, we have some litigation matters in our practice that are complex, but they're not complex by the standards of some types of litigation. I think obviously many of you are dealing with really challenging matters that are very complicated, and I'll give you a feel for how we did it, and I think you will end up doing something. You'll use these ideas, but setting fixed fees in complicated matters it's about shifting risk from the client to you, and it's going to be complicated. I mean, there's just no way around that. For us, the most complex cases are our litigation cases. We break them out into stages. We key the stages to benchmarks or events. In our cases, it's about initial pleadings, and it's about alternative dispute resolution, it's about discovery, it's about hearings, and then ultimately about trials. We set these benchmarks, and we attach fees to each of the benchmarks. And the way we do it is we prepare a client agreement on day one that addresses the fees in their entirety all through the course of a complex piece of litigation, and our client pays as those fees become due, but they stop paying if the litigation is ended before going through the entire process. So as soon as we settle, the client no longer owes any fees. And that's the way we've set it up. And I think that's a pretty good way to do it. And it gives the client an incentive to settle the case. What we never do in our practice, and you'll have to think about what makes sense for you, is we never extend credit. We are never doing work for which we have not been paid in advance. So I will have lawyers ask me, well, do you do a payment plan? And the answer is, we set the stages of the matter, but the fees come due before the work is done. And we leave ourselves time to withdraw from litigation before, we set the time as early as it needs to be set. Let me back up. We set the due date for a fee as early as it needs to be set in order to give us time to withdraw. So we never want to be in a situation where the court won't let us out of a case and we have not been paid. And we've been very successful with that. Now, that's one of those issues that a lot of lawyers struggle with in the beginning, is figuring out how they can get out of a case. And I have a lot of lawyers say to me, oh, in our jurisdiction, there's no way. Our judges will never let us out. And almost all of the time when I have pushed on that issue, we have found a way to get out. But if that truly is the case in your jurisdiction, then the fixed fee program in a complex matter needs to be that those fees are due in advance, because you do not ever want to be in a situation where there are payments due and you have no ability to get out and you haven't been paid for the work that you're doing. That gives you a feel for dealing with complex cases. I don't want to give you the sense that it's easy. It won't be. You're going to struggle with getting organized and making that happen, and it's going to take tweaking over time. That's the nature of the game. But again, you're in a much better position to take that risk than the client is. So how do you explain all of this to the client? You're going to have different kinds of clients that are sitting there on the opposite side of the table with you with questions about these fees. I mean, they're all sorts of different folks. And what I find is that the biggest challenge are the optimists, these really optimistic people who want to tell you and really believe, I think, that their case is incredibly simple. And it's like, yes, we're going to litigate child custody, and I don't think it'll be any big deal. It'll be over with in a hurry, and it'll all work out, and I'll win. And so it shouldn't be that expensive. And I find those people challenging, when we're trying to explain the fees, especially if they've talked to another lawyer, and that other lawyer is billing hourly, and the initial retainer is much lower than yours. And so explaining the fees in the beginning can be it will be something you have to get used to. Now, I have talked to a lot of lawyers about making this shift, and I'm going to cut to the chase with you about what really makes a difference in explaining fees. The fee itself is never difficult to explain. You're giving a price. People are used to a price. They're not used to hourly rates, and you've been explaining that in many instances for a long time. That's a complicated thing to explain. People are not used to that at all, and they don't like it, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to most of us. What we are used to is buying things for a fixed fee. We walk into a store, we see the price, we pay it. Even in an auto dealership, we see the sticker. We all know we might get a little off the sticker, but we know what the price is. Fixed fees are easy to explain. And so when I bump into somebody who is struggling with explaining fixed fees to a client, what it usually comes down to is that lawyer does not believe in the value of what they're doing. Now, I'm sure that's not a problem for any of you all that are here at this webinar, but I will tell you that when somebody struggles with it, that's usually where the struggle lies. It's not about explaining it. Now, when you give a big number to a client, that big number is something that they hear, but as you walk through the idea that it is certain, it is definite, that there is there will be nothing extra, and that it's all laid out in advance, and you want them to think about it, and then you contrast all of that with the hourly fee and how it's unpredictable and it's uncertain and things can get out of hand and the horror stories that go on. At times we've even pulled attorney fee affidavits from public records, from court files, and shown people, hey, this is what happens in some of these cases when it's hourly. We wouldn't want you to be surprised by that. And then we explain to them some of the benefits, that they're not signing a blank check over to us, that there is no need for them when they're in a meeting with us or on the phone with us to worry about that meter running and hearing that ticking clock in the background. And we explain to them in the litigation case that they will not be paying a balance due after the case is over, like they might be in an hourly situation. We explain that they've already paid the fees. And so all of those pieces are things you want to talk about and you want clients to understand. But I'm going to tell you, when you drill down with people that are struggling with this, it's almost always that the lawyer does not believe in the value of what they're doing. And I think it's easy for us to get into that place of not believing it because we understand it, we're the experts, and we don't always fully appreciate what the client is thinking and going through. Making the transition, very quick story. We made the transition all at once, overnight, decided, boom, here we go, we're off and running. We got rid of hourly fees, and we switched 100% to fixed fees. Big problem. We had a number of attorneys doing the initial consultations, and we had basically no new revenues in the first month. Nobody signed on with a fixed fee. Second month, same thing. Third month, same thing. Almost no new clients. Now, we were not yet starving to death because we had hourly fees still coming in from the existing clients, the people that had hired us before the transition. I refused to change because I'm hard-headed and probably not very smart, and I stuck with it. Finally, as the 90th day went by of almost no new clients, I said, okay, let's make a switch. And we started offering the clients the choice of a fixed fee or an hourly fee. And suddenly we were back in business. Clients were hiring us. And here's the weird part. They all paid the fixed fee, not the hourly fee. They all wanted the fixed fee. And within a year, we stopped talking about the hourly fees. We just were doing fixed fees. And it was clear in retrospect that it was about us, not about the clients. We weren't doing a good job. And I think fundamentally we didn't believe in it. We didn't believe in our value when we made that switch. And it took us a while to adjust to it. Okay, last poll. What's keeping you from using flat fees more often in your practice? I know a lot of you are experimenting with it, but what's keeping you from going 100%? Difficulty setting the fee, client resistance, fear on your part, or the state bar?
Okay, thanks for that, Lee. So please go ahead and finish casting your votes there. And majority has voted. I will go ahead and close the poll. And our results. And Lee, you've just touched upon this, so this is great. 74% said the difficulty in setting the fee is what's keeping them from using flat fees more often.
Yeah.
10% client resistance, 14% fear, and only 2% state bar.
Good.
So,
good. Well,
yeah.
That's a good sign. That's a really good sign, because the more of this you do, the easier it will become to set the fee. And like I said earlier, when you engage in this game of setting these fees, this will be the game you make the fastest progress of your life in, because it's real money and it's your money, and you will be focused on it, and you will learn this, faster than you learn anything. I promise you. Okay, few quick lessons here. We, in terms of the practice of how we do this, we set our fee for each client based on that client's story. We listen to the story at an initial consultation, and we set the fee. Sometimes we don't set the fee at that initial meeting if we have some things we would like to find out before we set the fee. But generally speaking, in our practice, we have a dozen lawyers who are doing the same stuff all the time, so they're pretty good at setting the fees after they hear the story. We consider the variables that we consider most important, the things that we've identified by going through the analysis that we did, and we have taken the information, the variables that we learned, and we created a fee calculator and put it on our website. And so, in fact, we have people that are reviewing those fees in advance before they come into the office. They're going to rosen.com and looking at that calculator and getting at least a sense of the range. But then we use that calculator to make sure that we're on track with the right ideas about what ought to happen in each case. But we try to set those fees right up front and tell the client and present them with a client agreement. Final few things here. These are very practical things, but lessons we've learned over the last decade or so. When the fixed fee is set in stages, when you're doing a complicated case like a litigation matter, you want to notify the client of an upcoming fee 30 days in advance of that fee. You want to go ahead and have an automated system for sending them a reminder email that that fee is going to come due. Then you want to remind that client in the days immediately preceding the due date, and you want to go ahead and collect that fee, and it is due on the due date. And I will tell you that we have in our firm a very strict policy of withdrawing from the case within 48 hours after the fee is overdue. You also need to build a system for dealing with expenses. You will still have some variable expenses, things like deposition, court reporter fees or expert fees, whatever it may be that you have in your practice. You don't want to abandon the accounting system simply because you're abandoning the hourly billing system. So make sure you've got some mechanism for dealing with those expenses, and obviously having a deposit into trust for those expenses makes a lot of sense rather than having to chase after that money after the case is closed. Now, here's an interesting thing we've learned from having done this for a long time. Clients, when you're setting the fee, clients don't mind big add-ons to the fee, and I'll tell you what I mean in just a second, but they do mind small add-ons or extras to the fee. So you'll have clients that get upset about you billing them for postage or photocopies or faxes. That sort of thing drives them nuts for some reason. What doesn't bother them is if you have an additional fee built into the agreement for something big, like you can say the agreement includes 5 depositions. If each additional deposition is $2,000 in attorney's fees, or in our cases it's qualified domestic relations orders, quadros, that we charge extra for. And oddly, because the numbers are much bigger, it seems odd to me, but oddly the clients do not freak out about those bigger fees. They only seem to freak out about the little add-ons. That's what seems to drive them crazy. It may be that they have this sense of being sort of nickeled and dimed. I'm not sure, but the big ones don't seem to upset them all that much. I mentioned earlier the blog that I write, Divorce Discourse, and there is a page, divorcediscourse.com/fees, where you will find a bunch of resources. There are probably 15 or 20 articles on fixed fees and our transition to it, things we've learned, that sort of thing, things we've learned from other folks. And then there's the Rudisill case documents that I mentioned and the client agreements that we use, both for litigation matters and for non-litigation matters. And I think you will find those useful as you make your journey down this road. So Stephanie, we're going to do some Q&A now.
Yes, Lee, there is a huge amount of questions that came through. Really great questions, which I don't think we're going to get to all of, but just a few things, and I'll get to a few of those questions. So for those of you who have to leave us now, please take note of 3 things. MyCase offers a 30-day free trial, and because you attended this webinar today, you get a bonus discount. So note that promo code there, 10FIX15, and you can use that after your trial. Secondly, when you close your webinar, a 4-question survey will pop up. Please take a quick moment to answer these survey questions. And for more incentive, we will randomly select 1 lucky survey responder to receive a $50 Amazon gift card. We give 1 away at each webinar. Also, you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to the blog where you will find these slides, the webinar recording, and the Amazon gift card winner. Okay, so now for some of those fantastic questions. Let's go with our first one here, Lee. I do a good deal of divorce work. Some cases are seriously prolonged because my client is emotionally hurt, may act in an unreasonable manner, requiring motions and frequent contacts, and unwilling to accept a reasonable settlement. On the other hand, I often represent reasonable clients, and their case is settled fairly and early. Can't help but feel like a fixed fee would reward the unreasonable and punish the reasonable client. How do you handle situations like these?
You know, everybody, well, the way we handle it is to set a fixed fee. I've got several thoughts that pop into my head. One is we just set a fee, and we do that using those variables. And what you're doing is you're identifying some variables. And what would be ideal is if you could make your best effort to predict, to look for things that you see in initial consults that help you predict those behaviors. Now, you're not going to be expert at that in every case, but you're sure better at it than a lot of folks because you're already talking about it. And so I would start thinking about those variables and building them into the fee. You don't have to charge the same fee to every client. So when you see pieces of that make you think, hey, this is one of these reasonable people, you can set it at one level. And when you see things that make you think, hey, this is one of these unreasonable people, and I will tell you in family law, you kind of know right off the bat when the person says, I'll never pay a penny of alimony, not one penny ever. It's like we know what camp they fall in, and that should impact their fee. But, and here's the big thing, in the way that you describe, I think you're right. It does penalize or some of your clients, except that what clients value is this certainty, this knowing what the fee is going to be in advance. And that is such a benefit. That is such a gigantic benefit that it overcomes whatever penalty you might worry about with respect to this other piece of it. And so, what happens is for a year of their life, for a lot of us, these cases, drag on forever. For potentially a year of their life, they don't have this giant anxiety about attorney's fees. And that is a big part of the anxiety that comes with a divorce, and you're taking that away. So you really are giving them something valuable, even though there is some other piece of it here that should be a concern.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Our next question, how do you handle the very demanding client who now believes that you are available to them 24/7 or for unlimited amounts of time?
You're going to have some of those folks, and your fee structure needs to account for that. When you're setting your fees, when you're looking at your existing practice as it is hourly, and you're looking at what are your revenues each year, how many clients does that involve, you're going to need to build into your fee structure that some clients are going to drive those numbers up, and that you need to account for that. You can't charge very low fees for the for everybody and have some people end up costing you a lot more effort than the others. You need to charge a fee that allows you to earn what you need to earn, and you spread that out over the larger group, and everybody wins because of that certainty.
Okay, great. Next question, moving right along. With a fixed fee, how do you handle surprise motions or issues with opposing counsel or party?
Well, some surprises are going to be part of the fee. I mean, it depends on the kind of case it is and how you want to break it down. But some unexpected things, those are the risks that you're taking on, and those are the risks that you are better prepared to take on than your client is, obviously, because you know what those things are. And so when we say unexpected, you need to expect these things to happen, whatever they may be, and then you need to build something in, because you can't expect everything. However, that doesn't mean that as part of your client agreement you can't build in additional things. You can say, okay, this case is we're going to try this case, we're going to have X number of witnesses, Y number of depositions, et cetera, and if there is anything in addition to that that's not described in this agreement, then there will be additional fees for that. You can either leave it open-ended and execute a new agreement when those things come up, or you can build them in and say, hey, we're not charging you for these things, but if they come up, this is what it'll cost.
That makes sense. And a few people asked, are there just some types of cases that don't lend itself to fixed fees?
I don't know the answer to that because, I practice family law and I talk to lawyers. I had lunch with a lawyer the other day. He's a 300 lawyer law firm, and he's representing, Fortune 10 companies, and he's traveling literally all over the world on private jets doing these cases. Can that be done on a fixed fee? I have no idea. I will tell you that he said that his clients are pushing for fixed fees in his gigantic cases. And my guess is smart lawyers like that are going to figure out ways to do it, but it's beyond me. I know, I can only tell you from my perspective and my experience that I've never bumped into a case that we couldn't figure out a reasonable fee for.
Okay. So this is an interesting question. Would a hybrid model work? For example, tell the client it will be an hourly rate up until a maximum of X amount of dollars, and after that amount has reached, there will be no further hourly rate?
Certainly, you can give that a try, and I would encourage you. my attitude is experiment with everything. However, the real benefit of the fixed fee is the certainty for the client and you not having to hassle with the fees. I mean, that's really where you feel the biggest benefit. The client feels like a winner and you feel like a winner. And so if you don't go all the way, you're keeping some of the old problems of the hourly model.
Yes, good point. When the fixed fee is too high for the client, do you recommend or eschew allowing installments to be paid?
You can, but I don't believe in extending credit. We're not bankers, and I don't think we should extend credit to them. Now, I only, I know the clients that I represent. Obviously, I don't have experience with your clients, but my gut is if somebody needs credit, they need to go to somebody that is in the credit business, and if they can't get credit to pay what they need to pay, there's a reason those experts at extending credit don't want to give those folks credit. I don't want to be in the business of deciding whether somebody should have credit extended to them or not, and I definitely don't want to be the one lending them that money.
Okay, great. And that actually, there are several people who had questions about not being able to afford, can't pay it all up front and whatnot. So I think you answered those questions for many people.
Well, and let me just say that, you need to do the math for your practice. But when you start, I have a lot of lawyers that when we start breaking things down and they say, well, these clients can't afford a higher fixed fee, they're lucky to be able to pay what they're paying. What we find out is that those clients paid what they paid and never paid anything else, and you ended up doing a lot of work for free. What may happen when you move to a fixed fee is that you may end up making the same amount of money and doing a lot less work, which is, it gives you time to go learn things and to become a better lawyer and to take a vacation once in a while.
Yes, vacation is important. Okay, one more question. If I take a fixed fee for a lengthy litigation, how do I get around having to hold the entire fee in my trustee bank account until the trial is over? I don't want to sit on a fixed fee for many months or years before I can take it.
You've got to look at the rules in your jurisdiction. In my jurisdiction, we don't have to do that. Fixed fees go straight into our operating account, and my experience in talking to the criminal defense attorneys is that that's what they do, is that in most states they have found ways to immediately move those payments straight into their operating accounts when the client pays them, that it never goes into trust.
Okay, thank you. And we had a lot of questions that are similar to this one, and I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but what about when a case goes sideways, repeat court appearances, motion after motion, extensive discovery, trial?
Yeah, it happens. I mean, that's the deal. You don't want to build your pricing model around the exceptions. You want to build your pricing model around what is more typical, and the average case moves forward, gets resolved, and doesn't go sideways. And so you take that average case and use it as your model, but then build something extra into all of those cases to account for that case that's going to go sideways. Then you're covered regardless of which case it is, because it's very difficult to know which ones are going to go sideways.
Yes, definitely. Okay, and a brief question here. How do you build in the expert fees?
We in our practice, it's an extra. We have, I said you need to account for expenses. So court reporter fees, expert fees, whatever it may be. You want to have a system where you are billing for those fees, and I would encourage your system to look like this. You anticipate the expert fee, you request that the client place the money in trust, and you have that money sitting and waiting, and when the expert sends you the bill, you go ahead and pay it out of trust. And a lot of these questions, these are great questions, and I think what I love about them is it says, okay, I'm going to experiment with this because I'm asking the detailed questions, which are wonderful. A lot of these are things that you will find resources for at divorcediscourse.com/fees, so check that out.
Okay, it looks like we have time for just one more. What about the tension in the event of a client who has no motivation to settle a family law case because continuing to drag out the case won't increase his or her attorney fees? That I thought was an interesting question.
Yeah, it is an interesting question, and it's one that we've addressed with our state bar. And our state bar allows us in certain types of cases, and you'll see this in our client agreement on the website. In certain kinds of cases, our state bar lets us say there's no hope of resolution based on the situation as it exists, and we can say we're done, and we will have fulfilled our obligation under that client agreement. And so that's one way to deal with it. Another way to deal with it is to put some time limit on the litigation. You know, this is a client agreement that covers X years or X months or whatever it may be, and at the end of that, our representation is over.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm impressed with how many questions you got through. There are many more, and we'll have those answers available on our blog later. Lee, thank you so much. You were really a great presenter, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thanks for coming, folks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.